This the story of crypto blood and truth blitz. Ask them a cliff high what the truth is. They was just talking about the blockchain. That's when they heard Janet yelling and the cops came. They said give me all your Bitcoin and lock aim. Then Jamie Dimon showed up and the shots rained. So they hopped in a Lambo and took off fast. Welcome to the Block Party Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Block Party Podcast, episode number 6. It's your boy Crypto Blood
and Truth Blitz. Today we got the long-awaited interview with Stephen Nico Williams from Populous. This is the first interview he's done since the whole FUD attack, so I know it's one everybody's been waiting for. So we're going to talk to him, listen to what he's got to say, and find out what is going on with Populous.
So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we have Nico Williams. He likes to be called Stephen Williams, CEO of Populous. What's going on, Nico? How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for having me on.
Good.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. So glad we were finally able to get this going, clear a lot of the FUD, the confusion, a lot of rumors and stuff that's going around with Populous. And, I just thought this would be a great platform for you to kind of, clear all that up for us. So before we do that, though, let's go ahead and talk about who you are, Steve. Like, where did you come from? Tell us this amazing journey that you're on and how far you've come this, and just explain to us what makes Stephen Nico Williams who he is.
Okay, well, I guess it started from 1979 when I was born. I was born in London, UK, Greenwich Hospital. The hospital ain't there anymore, but at the time then there was a hospital there. Mm-hmm. I grew up in London, then grew up in London, went to Tide Mill Primary School. From there, actually before that, I was fostered. So my parents left us, me and my brother, I have a twin brother, left us with our foster parents up until the age of around 7. That was up in Kent. So Kent is like another area in England, more towards the seaside sort of like. Okay. And was reunited with our parents back when they came back from Nigeria. So we went to go and live with our mum and dad up until they split up. So that brought us up until where we first started secondary school. Started secondary school at a school then called Crofton Secondary School. That's in the area in London called Crofton Park.
So when you say secondary school, what is that? For us Americans, is that like is that
middle
equivalent
school?
To middle school or high school or what?
High school. Basically.
High school. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not familiar with that. Ways that they do it in America, but so it's kind of like high school. So I was probably you start secondary school at the age of 11 and you finish when you're 16.
Oh, okay.
During that period, me and my brother were quite troublesome. Got into a lot of trouble with gangs and things like that in London. Lots of fights. So our parents decided that the best opportunity for us, was to ship us out to Nigeria. So we ended up leaving Nigeria after getting kicked out of the first secondary school attended. We went to Nigeria for a period of about 4 to 5 years. We came back. We went sixth form, which is like 1 year away from actually starting university. So we went to sixth form, and so basically that is where we basically started looking at technology and how to use it. So my brother basically, he was more hands-on with computers than I was at the time. He took the path of graphic design and media. I was more interested in financial markets. Well, not really so much in financial markets, but just interested in what my dad was actually doing at the time then. He's a chartered accountant. So he used to basically at the time used to work as a corporate finance director for Sands International Bank in Nigeria. He left Nigeria. He left the bank. He got expelled from the bank for basically for being too clean, too good. He would give loans out to fellow clients, and therefore he got loads of threats, and he decided he was going to leave the bank. So I mean, so from that point, I always used to see him at the time before, up until that, studying for ECIMA, ACCA, and all these type of different accounting sort of qualifications that he was trying to get at the time, which he did, and he did successfully get. So I was basically interested in finance, financial markets, how to make money, how people making money, and that sort of triggered my interest in finance, really. So so I basically started looking at data, what the actual thought was is how some of these companies on the financial pages, how these guys, CEOs, were actually selling their companies for hundreds of millions of pounds. I wanted to get down to the bottom of that, how they started it, because at the end of the day, it's a business. And if anyone can build a successful business, if they put hard work into it. And I just basically was interested in how they started. So what I did was I started looking at all different types of businesses, types of industries. And one thing or another led me to looking at balance sheets. And at the time, we had a company's house in London where I would basically go there and look at balance sheets from the beginning of incorporation of these companies up to where they were, just to understand. That brought me to understand how companies were valued, how they're valued, depending on public companies get valued using a price to earnings ratio, a multiple of sometimes of their turnover, and they are sold on that or whatever operating income they're receiving at the time then. So that made me realize, that gave me the understanding of companies' valuations. So then basically what I did was I started looking a bit more deeper into the data that was in companies' house. At the time then it was in PDF format. So most stuff that I was doing was manually done at the time then. So that's using my brain more than I do now. I guess that after a while, it started dawning onto me that I started seeing insights into this data and where the data was kept. And one thing or another, it led me to some things I regret at the time then. I looked at data from annual returns, capital held by companies in the form of collateral shares, pay-as-you-earn schemes, all types of incentive sort of schemes for employees of large organizations. And one thing or another led me to find several different types of loopholes in the data. And I then realized that, I've got some form of skill at looking at data in a different way, because basically these loopholes were presently there at the time then, and no one's discovered them. And my belief is that if something's undiscovered, then not too many people are aware of it. So that is where I started looking into data and realizing the potentials of data. And skipping forward to where I decided to take the road of honesty, basically, and build a successful business. I started teaming up with people that could sell this data to these type of organizations that could use this data to enhance their business. Hence, invoice factoring companies.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what I did first was we have companies like Experian, Dun & Bradstreet, BVD, Fame. Yep. These are companies that hold these type of databases with data on all companies all around the world that do file accounts. I mean, the process which they use is by getting people to input this data into their database. So, and then basically charging us the public or their customers a fee for looking at these companies or pulling this data out.
Right.
So at the time then I started looking at this, going to them. Now I've kind of moved from the manual stage of looking at documents in companies' house to moving on to companies like Dun & Bradstreet and Experian and Equifax, and basically pulling out spreadsheets of this type of data and then creating, looking at them, creating algorithms over them to determine if there's any form of indication that could create an edge in terms of getting to people first that need invoice finance, basically. So during that period, there was an announcement by Companies House that basically said that it was in around that 2008, 2009, where they basically announced, this was around the time of the whole big data, open data sort of climax in a sense. Mm-hmm. They basically said that we're going to open up all our financial accounting data, which includes profit and loss and balance sheets, in a new type of format called XBRL. Basically, as a data guy, I've seen an opportunity to basically to compete on the same level as these big multinational companies, Dun & Bradstreet. The reason why is because they have people inputting the data into the database. Whereas this new form of data, I could just download all of the content and run it through an extraction machine without having thousands of people inputting those data in the databases, and have a computer doing it on a cron for me, running through and going through the 1,500 or more data points on those financial statements. Mm-hmm. And continuously, at the time then, there was probably not really much companies that started using the XBRL format, but I knew that if I could build this tool with the help of my friends, developer friends in India, basically, well, one of them, Mukesh, I could basically get a head start and basically find different insights into financial data that's not been seen before, which I have basically. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So which we'll see later on.
So explain to us this whole XBRL thing and how that's is superior to previous technologies and formats. Like how is that better? Okay.
So for example, with XBRL, allows with XBRL. So you have say for example, you go to Dun & Bradstreet, mm-hmm. and you say, I like to look at a company. I like to look at companies in this industry. Let's say there's probably about 100,000 of them. Dun & Bradstreet goes, okay, what's your budget? And you goes, my budget is around £100,000. They go, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to charge you 50 pence for each financial record, and you're going to roll over them, and that's going to cost you basically about 50,000 or 50,000 pounds. So I'm giving you a quick example of the power of XBRL. So with XBRL now, you can extract the same 100,000 records for nothing, and still do your analysis, your predictive analysis on that data. So basically, what would someone do with 100,000 records in industry from one type of industry? They would look at the patterns of the industry. They can see it going forward as a whole instead of just looking at it as one company. Remember, we don't basically have as much information on private companies as we have on public companies.
Right.
So, I mean, this is quite new in the sense of to the ordinary guy or to those companies that that can't afford the type of budget. These consulting companies work on behalf of multinational companies to create these industry reports. And that's on the industry scale. So, I mean, so if you can see the huge potential of using that type of data for that particular reason, that's one example.
Okay. So what I guess what led you to blockchain? You know what I mean? What got you into blockchain and made you think, you know what, like I'm gonna do this using blockchain?
Okay, so basically, I started a business with a guy at the time then of going around with the data that I've started using for XBRL to actually I went to a couple of banks. We got a couple of contracts, and we started providing data. Then one thing or another led to my partnership with that guy breaking up, and he went his own way. I'm not going to go too much into detail about that, but I mean, he went his own way, and I just decided that I'm going to more or less take control of my own business in the way I want and reinvent it in a type of way. So I started, I had a friend who used to trade Bitcoin, and he said basically he's making money from trading Bitcoin. Like everyone else, I was a bit, well, like everyone else that's not known to or doesn't know Bitcoin well enough to understand the potential. I was like, oh, it's some form of trading where you can win or lose. I wasn't aware of the potential, and I decided that after a while of hanging around with him, I just basically want to know a bit more. So I went to, I started Googling different types of Bitcoin meetups, and then I eventually found one called CoinScrum, quite a well-known one in London. And then I went along there one evening to a pub quiz, and guys were open. They had their arms open, welcomed me in, sat down, pretty much new to it. I probably was probably the only type of person from my background in there, from being from the streets in London, not really much of what I would call myself a geek in that sense.
Right.
But, yeah, I started in this pub quiz, and what I was asking people was chatting to them, asking them, can I do this with the data that I got? So my whole thought process was to input the whole entire data sets into the blockchain and then offset certain elements from the balance sheet in real time input to create a actual live sort of financial system. A couple of guys said to me, there's two types of blockchains you can do that on. One is Ethereum and one is Rootstock, which is not out yet. Had another name at the time then. And basically said what will happen is that's going to cost a lot of money, right, for the amount of code in what you're storing in on Ethereum. Mm-hmm. So I know I had the data. I knew what the elements I wanted from the data. So I started, okay, fair enough. I don't know too much, but what I need to understand is everything about Ethereum to basically get to the point of knowing what I can actually do with the data and on it, the financial data I'm looking at.
So are you guys actively looking at alternative or next gen blockchains as well?
I was going to ask that. Yeah, you know where I was going.
You know, as you stated, Ethereum. How are you guys hedging yourselves as far as what is coming in the future with new generation blockchains that will basically bring the cost down for you guys and make things even faster? Are you guys actively looking at these types of alternatives?
So we're focused at the moment on Ethereum. We see huge potential there, and we've found ways of working around the cost and things like that. Okay. So Wisdom has brought down our costs immensely. I mean, practically down to zero, not zero, but what would it cost us? I mean, yeah, we do look at different types of blockchains. RSK, Rootstock is one of them. We've been in discussion with them for over several months in terms of releasing the Populous on the Bitcoin smart contract platform. There are some thoughts of actually coming out with our own blockchain should we get big enough and control it. But logically that would make far more sense than relying on another blockchain. But these are still later on to come once we perfected the invoice market.
So have you happened to check out EOS?
I've had a couple of people mention it to me, but my focus is fully at the moment on Ethereum. I mean, really, I don't really get enough time to do much research on other technologies, but I mean, it is notes we're taking down. I mean, it's different from when you're working on something than to pivot to another type of blockchain. I mean, I think that would just cause major distractions in the way our team are operating. If we just started thinking about, what can we do with another blockchain, because there's so many popping up. We'd have them on the merit of what they can do in terms of for what our operations are.
Okay.
So basically, I just quickly get back to where I was in terms of the meetup. So I met a few guys from the meetup. Started talking about in the pub quiz. Talked about the DAO incident. Play some videos about parody sort of DAO videos, and then I got a good understanding of where we were and what Ethereum was. So then the rest was my research to understand it and look, and then start building some smart contracts, and then eventually got the basis of what I needed to do basically.
Cool. So how long, when did you actually start this endeavor in Populous? You know, when did you actually start with it and start planning it and start building it?
Yeah, because you ran into some roadblocks, right? Okay, so kind of go through some of the issues you had leading up to Populous for us.
Okay, yeah. So from the early start, when I realized what I wanted to do, I actually said basically after selling data to some of these financial organizations, I decided that, you know what, this is not viable for me. My partner at the time was willing. He thought it was okay to sell data to them for around 5 to 10 pence per lead, while they were going to actually make tens of thousands from those leads. So that's a waste of my time. I'm not doing that. And we had some disagreements. So from there, I decided, you know what, I can basically build out the same sort of business that these financial institutions have themselves. So I started inquiring about the fundamental things I would need to establish the business. And one of the things that I came across was credit insurance. So I gave a call up to some credit insurance providers, and I was asked in terms of how much capital do you have, and I basically said none, and they were like, we can't help you. You need at least £1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically felt, okay, where am I going to get £1 million from? This is not going to happen. And it kind of deterred me in terms of wanting to reach the goal which I had planted in my mind. So I eventually met. And at the time then, it was kind of like me by myself. My brother was into his own publishing company, and he was actively doing what he was doing successfully. And I just decided that I will go in a different route and start looking into technology in a way that I haven't looked before. And hence, I got a mentor.
Okay.
So, so this mentor basically structured me out in a type of way that gave me a good understanding of how to face business in a certain type of way and how to be concise in certain areas. And this is where I started realizing that some of the barriers that were holding me back were actually, there was actually ways I could go around them. And hence blockchain was one of them. Not that he did lead me onto blockchain, but he gave me understanding that with technology, we can create peer-to-peer marketplaces with the data and generate finance from reports that we can use to fund other things. Hence PXT basically. But so my mentor was played a vital role to basically where I am now, because I had that sort of not that I've moved away from the sort of ghetto mentality to a more structured kind of corporate mentality.
Yeah, we call it a hustler. Yeah, from a hustler to entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. So true entrepreneur. So I mean. It just put me on that path where I guess I had to build and develop from there.
Gotcha.
Nice. So I guess let's get into the platform a little bit and talk about some of the points about how Populous operates. So can you explain for everyone who doesn't know how the token will be valued for invoice purchasing? Is it going to be priced against the market price of Populous, or, you know what I mean? It is for the value of the token for purchasing invoices. How are you going to value it?
Okay, so basically, PPT,
right,
would be the only way of purchasing invoices on the platform, or using PPT to collateralize PPT and give you tokens in return to trade invoices in the platform.
Right.
So this is how we do it. So we take feeds from different exchanges, and we put them over a 30-day moving average period, and then on the basis of that, we can now control the volatility of the price of PPT over 30 days, and then whatever rate we want to set for PPT per token, that is decided on the exchange of the day and when they deposit the token. This is to cover swings in terms of prices of PPT going up and down in one day or two. So, and we use Binance, BTC, KuCoin, and various other stable sort of platforms to determine how much we're going to collateralize and give tokens in return for the PPT that is deposited in the smart contracts. Mm-hmm. So that is also dependent on how much we have in physical gold reserves. So what the idea is that we will never lend out more than 50% of the gold we have in, and that is basically to counteract any sort of negative impact on the gold going down in terms of should the price move against us on PPT, we always have 50% of that to go into, if that makes sense. So we only left 50%, and the other 50% is kind of like a buffer.
Okay. CB, you had some questions about that, right? About the gold.
Yeah. So my question was really in regards to is that token redeemable for gold? Like, as a customer, am I able to come to you and say, hey, I want gold instead of the, token or PPT back?
I'll explain so it gives you you get a clear idea of different ways of redeeming fiat or gold or whatever way you want to do it. So the issue here now is that in the crypto space, we're hearing a lot of banks blocking transactions into crypto, out blocking accounts, no matter how big the companies are stable. And what I decided is that I didn't want a situation of where we have a lot of capital in regards to invoice sellers or invoice buyers held with us, and suddenly the bank freezes account or stops or closes the bank account, and then our operations come to a halt. So I've actually do some thinking around this and think there are ways to reduce this type of impact. And also I realized that banks are acting like some form of cartel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
No one bank can stand away from the bank and offer crypto services without being impacted or being squeezed out by the other banks.
Right.
They're all in it together. And I've had bank accounts frozen, business accounts closed for just basically trying to build this platform out. So, and basically what the answer is, your token aspect of your platform is the reason why we're closing the account. Fair enough. Okay. If you don't want to deal with it, it's not the government that's against it. It's banks within themselves.
Right.
So what I decided was, okay, how am I going to be smart around this? Okay, if I'm holding physical gold, I can hold gold anywhere. The issue with gold is the logistics around gold. So we don't have to. No one really needs a license to trade gold. Gold has been around for centuries. So I started looking at how money was, how when money was pegged to gold, basically, and I realized that we can actually peg crypto to gold, and what we'll do is this basically what we'll do is we have the gold physically held in a vault. An invoice buyer with PPT deposits gold into the Populous collateral contract. He gets his allocation in tokens. The gold that he now trades in the invoice auction, the tokens now go to the invoice seller. The invoice seller requested the funds from us. We sell off the gold, get immediate cash for the gold, transfer the proceeds of the sales invoice to the invoice seller. The invoice seller now pays back the funds, the full 100% of the funds from the invoice back into our bank account, and we repurchase gold back into our, simple.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but so here's my issue with that though is, how do we know, is there is there a third party that's auditing this, or is explain that aspect of it?
Yeah. So basically, that's all those auditing of the gold is never been an issue. What is the issue is the fact that when you're open to your sources, when you're open about your sources, from my experience of what from in this community, if I declare something in terms of this person's working with us or this person, they start getting attacked for all various type of communication channels, pressuring these guys making them think that there's something bad going on. And these guys will later on feel, okay, you know what, I just don't want this hassle. And they'll pull out. So I had a word with our gold holders, and I said, would you mind me basically giving your name out as the source of the source of who holds our gold and the vault? And basically they're actually they don't mind, and they are actually audited by Deloitte
too.
One of the 4 major accounting firms. So they don't mind. So that's not a problem. But what I do know from experience, like I just mentioned, is I know you're going to get bombarded with a ton of emails, phone calls from various different types of people. People, I don't know, proclaiming they're supporting the product, but basically have other intentions. So what we worked out with our suppliers and other participants is that these kilogram gold bars, they have serial numbers on them. So they can be audited by any accounting firm, or they could be traced from the original source or where they've been purchased from. And that can still point to us where they're held. So we have various different ways of auditing it without disclosing where they're being held, and just basically confirming that we are actually in receipt of that.
So you see how you would see how a person using the platform might be concerned about the lack of transparency regarding where your gold is being held. Is there checks and balances behind that? Like, so I mean, do you see that as a concern for you? Trying to solicit new customers and new business?
Yeah, I mean, if I was an invoice buyer with my PPT, which I have a lot of PPT, I'll be very concerned as well. So my interest to make sure that process is as transparent as possible, while at the same time making the gold as secure as possible as well. Hence why I trust it to be in the vault where other people are holding their own gold as well. I mean, what we also discussed with our vault is having the same accountancy firm audit their gold, audit ours, which they basically said they would do at no extra cost. So that is the solution.
Okay, so we'll get into more of like a lot of the concerns that the community has about and around Populous. We'll get into that in a second. I do want to double back and talk about why and how Populous is a threat to the current regime, the current structure.
The legacy system.
Yeah, the legacy system. And I guess we can kind of segue that into a lot of the FUD that's been spread around and possibly tackle that as well. So just kind of go over why Populous is a direct threat to the current system.
Okay, so it's a combination of things. One of the major things is the way we're going to use this type of data we have to corner the market in a sense. And the second, another thing is the platform's a global platform. It's a peer-to-peer marketplace, peer-to-peer finance. So that means in invoice finance, from my research, most companies, most participants in in invoice finance are either wealthy individuals or companies, and they put a benchmark limit in place so that the ordinary person can't participate because of capital. And usually you might find that in the UK around £50,000, or in the US $50,000, and it's not really ideal for anyone that doesn't have those funds to start trying to acquire them to do that. There's other things that they would rather do that doesn't give them that much stress to acquire those funds. So basically, what Populous does is Populous allows entry into the invoice finance marketplace with no minimum. So basically, what you get is you may have a guy in Iceland that raises an invoice on the platform, and the guy in India that's probably done some freelance work for Upwork or another person, purchased some crypto, Bitcoin, Ether, converted it to PPT, and now uses his PPT to earn him a passive income. Whereas he wouldn't necessarily get the type of return if he put that into his bank account in Mumbai, for example. So basically, that doesn't just happen between a guy in Holland, well, an invoice seller in Holland and an invoice buyer in India. That happens globally. Also, XBRL, the data that we use to target, as well as credit score these invoice sellers, is a global standard. So it's quite it's used by all the companies in the US, which are basically regulated by the SEC. Mm-hmm. Majority of companies, well, almost 90% of companies in the UK, Europe, and some parts of Asia, Singapore, if I'm correct. Don't hold me on that one, Singapore, but majority of companies in Asia. So what we're seeing here now is, if we develop Populous and deliver it successfully, and it's running successfully for unforeseen future, then we're going to take a lot of business away from the traditional invoice factoring companies. For example, like I mentioned before, these guys are still doing stuff the old sort of way in terms of inputting data, sending people around to people's doors one by one to ask the business owner, can I take some moment of your time? Can I ask you if you need invoice finance? Whereas we don't need to do that. We can mail shot tens of thousands of people in one go, even if we get a response back of 1%, 2%, which will be much higher than that, because we're targeting who we know we want to target. So we already know who needs invoice finance before they know it themselves, which is a form of predictive analytics as well in use, and using big data in a way that it's not been used before. Mm-hmm. And we'll get a response, and we'll be those sales guys for those banks to get to their customers on a daily basis and regular, basically. And that is a threat in terms of taking food from their plate, and also the cost of invoice factoring or discounting with these type of providers. There's always hidden charges such as administration fees. The platform doesn't charge any sort of sign-up fee or admin fee, which is sometimes in the range of in the thousands of pounds, basically £10,000 by some banks to charge. And that cost is down to zero. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it would be a threat to a lot of institutions or organizations. I mean, and clearly, the blockchain is a major contribution. It pays a large contribution to the aspects of trust in terms of payments and people controlling their own finances. So these are all aspects that cause it opens up areas for disruption.
So with that being said, we know that in business, you know, you play chess, not checkers. That's what I always say is it's 3 steps or so ahead that you have to plan, right? So, so Nico, explain to me, we talked about how you're going to disrupt it and why it's a threat to them, but what type of counter moves could they play to really try to limit you and mitigate your business, your threat? What can they do? And have you guys prepared for these potential scenarios? Because I think that's a huge issue that needs to be definitely have like a contingency plan on what you're going to do when they do X, Y, Z.
Okay, so basically, we're years ahead from any bank actually carrying out full operations on the blockchain in a sense. Right. I mean, they're tying their own regulation. As soon as they start carrying out, then I think they're kind of locked they have on terms of people buying and selling crypto will ease up, because obviously it makes logical sense. You need to buy crypto to use on their platform to buy invoice or whatever. Right. So they get that. We're still years away from that. They want to make sure regulation is tight. But I mean, like you said, what's our counter? How do we counteract them taking our market share or coming in business? Well, simply is this. With XBRL data, it's not just invoice financing that we found leads for, in a sense. We can move in any industry you want, including property, high on our agenda once we've successfully delivered the invoice finance sort of project successfully. So I mean, we'll always be one step ahead, because our data allows us to find new and different insights and different marketplaces that don't exist at the moment, and we rely on innovation. And I believe that is the key in terms of keeping one step ahead, in a sense.
One other question that relates to what we were just talking about as far as the invoice sellers and the buyers. A question that came up among some of my followers on Twitter were concerns about how you were going to deal with risks of default. And what are your plans to basically protect the person selling the invoice? Is there any insurance? Will you be offering that at a fee? Or kind of explain what are you planning on doing to kind of protect the sellers?
Okay, so basically we're taking a traditional approach to customer defaults from invoice sellers. So what actually happens in the industry at the moment is individual invoice sellers take out their own credit insurance, and then they can allocate the benefits of that policy to Populous, the platform. We will have a policy in place that we can put invoice sellers onto the credit insurance policy as well, which covers them against the likelihood of non-repayment from their customers. So that is one of the major ways of dealing with the risk in the sense of non-payment of goods or services that the invoice seller has sold.
And these are all in place, or are these like hypothetical scenarios or relationships that you have? Do you already have insurers ready for this, or are you still looking for those partnerships?
So basically, it's not a situation of you will never get them or you don't want them. It's a matter of money. I mean, right. With the invoice seller, in terms, okay, for example, I'll give you an example. One of the invoice sellers that are going to be selling invoices on the Populous platform, his scenario works like this. He has credit insurance, and he makes us the beneficiary of that credit insurance. So he pays the cost, and that is basically a done deal in terms of protection against for us and for himself. So yeah, we're just basically talking about invoice sellers, as you basically said, in terms of protecting them against non-payment.
Correct.
I mean, yeah, so the credit insurance is probably the most viable way. I mean, I just want to expand on that, your question, because I mean, to protect everyone as a whole, we have other types of ways we secure against the debt or the funds that are being sent to the invoice seller on behalf of the invoice buyer, which is also directors' personal guarantees, or a personal guarantee from the director, and also a fixed charge over the assets of the company.
There you have it, people. Part 1 of episode 6 with Stephen Nico Williams, CEO of Populous. If you want to catch part 2, you got to jump over to the Block Party Podcast YouTube channel. There's a link in the right corner. Make sure you click it and you can check out part 2. We'll check you guys later. Holla.